Okay, we'll get going in a second. So what we want to do now is get some feedback from our groups and bring it back and tie this all together in the last theme too as well. Okay, so on our research group one, which is the Clinical Trials Advisory Council, we've got Moira and Emer who are going to give us feedback on what we should do about CTAC. Floor's yours.
Hello everybody, I'm Moira from the Patients Committee. So we had question 1. We can read it there. How do we collectively support the work of the Clinical Trials Advisory Council? So we looked at the first point, which was promoting value and intensifying activity. So the group focused first on startup. So the first suggestion was to have budget, to basically plan out the budget in order that the staff costs would be more accurately predicted. So the thing was that certain activities of the staff were planned out and budgeted for, but others weren't. So it ended up, you know, that wasn't working out. The suggestion was to have standard national templates for planning that. Another suggestion was national representation of trials and then a kind of collective approach to that, including all island. And then somebody else mentioned just the interface with industry to work on that. Another part of that was, and this covered as well the point, creating an agile and responsive systems kind of came into that. So the importance, as Emer started out with, of the metrics and the data, that, you know, we need the hard facts in order to attract in more trials from abroad. And then on the strategic workforce development, the question was like who was going to have a voice on the council. Then the whole issue of funding permanent roles. So, for example, permanent contracts for research nurses, an education pathway for, you know, various roles coming into working in clinical trials. And then I think is a huge one is the protected time for the consultants. You know, it all starts with that. We don't have that. You don't have your leadership. So there was talk of IT and, you know, collation of data. We all know the big problem we have in healthcare without the unique All Ireland health record number. It's when we get that, it will help with, like that somebody was suggesting, a central patient database or registry where people could, that could be interrogated for people who are suitable. But we all know with IT we're very far from that at the moment. The issue of feasibility was brought up, at what point that sites are introduced to the potential of a trial. And then referral pathways between hospitals. So that's probably very important as well. If someone is attending somewhere where trials aren't run or very few, how they are connected with sites where trials are run. So that's what we discussed.
Lovely, thank you very much. That's really good. Any questions or any suggestions back from the floor? No? So we'll take these back in. These themes are really, you've really touched on a lot of really core themes that have come up, particularly over the last couple of years, and we even take the protected time as one big issue for sure. I think you really call it in the healthcare number. You've heard Cancer Trials Ireland speak about this and about integrated data systems across Ireland, and those things are coming, but we'd love to see them here now. But that's really, I mean, you'd imagine a lot of those themes are re-emerging, so that's really fantastic to have those. Now, our second group is about where we're going to be in 2030 and maybe beyond. Is that right? Jed, you're going to tell us anyway, but where we're going to be 2027 to 2030. Jed, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. I don't know about that. What capabilities must CTI strengthen or build? The first one that we have on the list there is greater international collaboration. And the area that I believe is a big holdback for us is GDPR. and how that translates into not being able to get the pharma trials into this country compared with Denmark. We were talking very much about Denmark, which has 10 times more cancer trials than we do, but with a similar population, and how that needs to be communicated. The next one on the list is to stronger voice to government on behalf of the community. Now, I'm involved with the Cancer Patients Advisory Committee, which is a minister, the health minister appointed position. I've been on it for now close on 3 years, and I'm not sure whether any more meetings are happening. We've lost 3 civil servants who were heading up. I've been there 3 years. We've had 3 civil servants heading it up, and it just seems to have collapsed. So working at that very high level isn't working. So one of our groups suggested that we try at a more local level, either TD or even at council level, to point out that half the population will have a cancer diagnosis in their lifetimes, and that they really should be working to help that half of the population, and of course the other half who are having to deal with those cancer diagnoses. So maybe trying to present to those councils, perhaps on International Clinical Trials Day, which also addresses the 4th point, which was sustained multi-year funding, which obviously CTI is very interested in. And as the Irish Cancer Society has the Daffodil Day once a year, perhaps we could use the International Clinical Trials Day as a way to raise funds on an annual basis, and perhaps do that through the councils. Maybe make it a point that we go into those councils on that day and show them how important it is to their constituencies, because that's really what they're interested in. How can they get votes? Well, if they can be seen to be promoting something that will help the lives of half the population. Public and patient involvement, I think, is putting patients in front of the TDs and the counsellors, I think, is very powerful. It's something I'm involved with as a patient advocate. We have a short documentary coming out, which is promoting a specific cancer trial, which is the one that I'm on, and showing how it affects the lives at a personal level, and that type of promotion of encouraging people to come onto the trials, but that's only useful if we get the trials. So one of the other things that was to do with the greater international collaboration is to where the Nordics, particularly the Danes, have come over to Ireland. They're very impressed with what CTI are doing and how the clinical trials are conducted. Well, if they're impressed and they're getting 10 times more trials than us, well, there's something. Yes, we're doing something right, but boy, they're the ones who are actually achieving these things. So a collaboration with Denmark to find out how they are overcoming the GDPR, perhaps, and funding issues that we are not overcoming. So that's something CTI could be involved in really strengthening that collaboration. Just trying to see if I can. Any other? Oh, EU. Yes, we were talking about government getting more EU involvement. They don't seem to be interested in any approaches that have been made by people in our group to the our EU representatives are just ignored. And I think something that the CTI could do is to promote that, this 50% of the population. I mean, what could be more important than the lives of 50% of the population to having money, being put into helping half the population? I can't see any. There's nothing else out there that could be more helpful. I think. Oh yes. I've probably talked enough, though, haven't I? Yes.
I think you've given us lots to think
about. Okay, right. Fine. I'll hand over. I just had my steroids there a couple of days ago, so I just.
Thank you, Jed. That's brilliant. You can't beat a shot of steroids, eh? Thanks, that's very, very helpful. So our third one, is Ireland as trials destination. I thought it sounded a bit like Fulsha, Ireland, but that's a different matter, But I think, who's going to do it? Great. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. Seamus, there we are. Seamus,
yep. So I'm Seamus, I'm the patient representative for Group 3. So high quality and high trust, so we kind of had a discussion about what that meant, and that was probably based on delivering what you say you're going to deliver. So that maybe don't be over-promising, because it's from whose perspective are we looking at this question as well. We kind of figured it's probably more from the sponsor, the pharma, coming in to make sure they'll come back. If you don't deliver what you say you're going to deliver, whether that's from recruitment or otherwise, they will say, okay, we're not coming back to this centre. So we talked about streamlining the process. I know Emer's already doing a lot of this work. It's a highly regulated process, so there's not many or any steps you can skip, but it's about doing that other work that you can do concurrently with that process to give you that head start. We talked about the incentives, and it was mentioned there earlier about protected time for clinicians to write a study, do the research, rather than the why are you doing that, why aren't you seeing or treating patients that might be coming. So making sure that there's an incentive there to develop high quality trials and build that trust. Reducing the timelines, I think that sort of ties in with streamlining the process, to try and make sure that as well the sites that you're selecting, we had an interesting discussion around if you're doing a multi-site trial, whether you might be adding additional sites for the patients to be able to access, but if a certain site can't actually recruit the number of patients that it has set out to recruit, that's again reducing the trust that the sponsor may have because you haven't delivered what you've said. So maybe there's a strategic choice there to say, no, we won't include that site, but we might ask that patient or number of patients to go to a site nearby, but they can still do the rest of their treatment at their local hospital. We talked about feasibility and make sure that's been reviewed at an appropriate level to make sure that everything has been considered from the outset, and it's critically evaluated and adjusted where needed at an early stage. Collaboration between sites, so looking at the timelines for the various steps in that initial process and seeing how one site may be doing compared to another, and see, can we collaborate and see, okay, if you're doing this well, how are you doing that, and share those learnings between sites. Could be beneficial and bring the overall time down across sites to get that approval. Was there any? Yeah, communication between the sponsor. There was examples in our group where the communication of the approval might have been given in January, I think was the example. But the site wasn't actually informed of that for a number of months, so just making sure that that's in place as well. Was there anything else, Rachel, I missed? Okay. Sinead?
Thanks, Seamus and Rachel. Thank you. And so our fourth one is national research capacity. How do we expand national research capacity and embed patient-focused innovation across care pathways? Martin, you're going to feed back from our group.
Well, one of the first things we discussed was leveraging technology to see what we can do and how we can actually leverage existing technology to improve outcomes and participation. For example, there's the National Shared Care Record, which many people will know is not yet up to scratch for this purpose, but we do need a national record in order to help enroll people into trials. A lot of people don't know that they have an IHI number, an individual health identifier number, so that's something that, I think letting people know would be useful, and people know that they can actually, that other hospitals in the future will at least be able to see some of their records, is something we should work on. We also talked about the hub and spoke model of research and allowing people to be able to attend as close to possible for their treatment and for a trial, so that if they're attending a centre, that it's close as possible, they're not travelling too much if possible, and to try and make it more, I suppose the best word is user-friendly for the patient. What was the third one there? Sorry.
Core funding.
Yeah, core funding. Core funding, we were discussing that without any core funding and a funding that is agreed in advance and multi-annual rather than just year by year, this cannot happen. You can't build a system that is dependent on the whim of the economy or a particular minister. There has to be agreed funding, and there has to be a core to that funding. I think that's it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Martin. I think that's a really good summary wrap-up. So we'll take those flip charts back and try and put that all together and actually make that as a report out of our treat. So I want to thank Jed, Martin, and Moira, Seamus, and Rachel for all their inputs. Thank you. So I think now we've got insights from industry representatives, is that right? The next bit, so invite those to come up. That's great. I think, Seamus, this is over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jerry. So we would welcome people's feedback and comments about where we are and where we're going and where they see the challenges and opportunities. So Ken is roving with the mic if one or two people would like to speak.
Martin, well, we might just hang on for 1 second and see if we can get anyone from industry. But
behind you, Ken.
There we go.
Hi everyone, Deirdre from AstraZeneca. Thanks so much for today, it's been great. I'm just back from maternity leave not long, so it's great to catch up on all the good work that's been done to date, and there's been fantastic work done, I think, in terms of the data generation and being able to show exactly what we're doing. One thing I just wanted to highlight today, well, kind of two things really. Just, I suppose, for the clinical investigators, utilise the pharma representatives in terms of our medical affairs teams, particularly in terms of identifying those unmet patient needs, particular populations where you feel that trials are particularly needed, or you may be able to contribute more meaningfully. Because us, I suppose, in industry, we're constantly trying to pitch for trials for Ireland, and it just gives us that confidence when we're putting forward a case if we know that there's a particular site or a particular unmet need in that population. So that's just one thing. And the other thing, I suppose, is just to kind of reiterate in some ways the obvious, but in terms of one of the main sources of data that on a global level the pharmaceutical companies look at when we're looking to set up trials is the recruitment on target. So if you do have trials open, I suppose that a primary importance is that those trials run well and recruit to target. So if you do have trials, you know, and there's any issues with them, you know, please link in with your medical affairs representatives if we can support in any way in terms of any issues you may be having or any clarifications. Because I suppose for us, that's the first kind of thing sometimes that the global colleagues look at, like how have previous trials that have opened, have they run on, like the startup is one part, but when they are open, are they recruiting well? And we have a number of really, really good examples of trials that over-recruit, but we also have the examples of trials that may be more difficult to recruit for, and you know, overcoming those challenges early is really important as well. Well, thank you for all the work to date.
You're very near a speaker. Just
reverb. Is this okay? Yeah. So Ciara O'Dwyer from Bristol Myers Squibb. And just to your point, Deirdre, as well, so it's great to see today the advances. I was particularly interested in your talk as well about the FDA audit. So as part of the EFA working group, we're putting together a pitch deck for trials in Ireland. So with our local teams, you guys probably noticed this too, we have to really pitch to our global teams as to why you need to select Ireland. And historically, obviously, there hasn't been strong data to pull from, but we were just kind of having a conversation here, and I certainly want to try and include about that audit approval and the setup that we have in Ireland, but I'd love to get some of the more specifics of why we need to select in Ireland and what's the best way to do that. So I might be calling on some people who are interested in being involved to review that, to help us to make that pitch at a global level. So it's been great to connect with everyone to make those partnerships. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Gwen Morley from IQVIA, Ireland. So we're a global contract research organisation. So I know Deirdre and Ciara are speaking on behalf of individual sponsors, but actually we conduct research on behalf of all the sponsors from, you know, phase 1 right through to post-marketing. Again, I'd just like to thank, it was great morning, really enjoyed the conversation. And I think there's a huge appetite across Ireland, really, you know, to raise the tide. But I agree with what both Deirdre and Ciara are saying, collaboration, use the industry. We're all really trying to push Ireland to the forefront, because definitely I think as the FDA audit, those results demonstrated the quality, the expertise, everything that resides with Ireland, we can really do it. But it's just the KPIs, those startup times, that are really letting us down on just demonstrating the capability, because there's a phrase we use internally in IQVIA: clinical research should be a clinical option. It shouldn't be two separate streams. It should, they're crossing over, that there's a lot more option that can be. But my ambition would be, within IQVIA, we have a terminology, prime site. And if you're a prime site within the IQVIA world, you actually get every piece of research, you get support with tech, you get with training, and that's what I would like to bring to Ireland. But as a virtual prime site, I think we're too small to have individual sites as a prime site, but I think if we worked as a collective, we could really deliver that. So that would be my own personal ambition. I started my career as CRA. I feel so passionate about it. I've obviously had family experiences with cancer, and to have clinical research as another option was really, really powerful. So I think really and truly, from my perspective, is really to encourage that collaboration and that public-private partnership. And I think that's the one thing when you look at Denmark, and if you look at Spain, which is another exemplar country for clinical research, it was the public-private partnerships that really drove their success in clinical trials, and using that commercial infrastructure and funding to actually support the investigator-led studies as well, which I think is so, so important. So thank you again, and really happy to be involved in whatever we can do to really drive that clinical research program in Ireland.
Thanks very much, Gwen.
Maybe open it out a bit further, if that's okay then, Seamus. And Martin, we had you first, and Veronica, we can come back to you. You had a question earlier we didn't get to.
Yeah, what I would like to see is when a trial is finished, the results come out, when they come out, like for example, the exercise trial that showed that, doing exercise during chemotherapy helps with the outcome. I would like to see specifics. Like, that's useful to hear, but what I would like to hear is, well, here's how much exercise you should do, what intensity, what kind of exercise, how long for, something that can actually, you can actually go then and build a program around. Because it's great to hear that exercise works, but I want to know what kind of exercise. And then also, that should feed back into, if patients undertake this exercise, if they go to a gym or something like that, and they can keep a record of what they did, you could start to refine what type of exercise is working better for different people, and where the limits are and things like that. So I think that having an ongoing approach once a trial is over to looking back and seeing, well, okay, is it still working? Can we tweak it even further? Because usually you can tweak everything further. And the other thing I was going to make was the de-escalation information was very interesting today. It is interesting to see that if you reduce a dose, that the outcome doesn't change. That's would be very welcome to most patients, because obviously it reduces toxicity. It could also mean reducing time. I was not surprised to see that the price for some of the medication didn't go down. I'll just give you a little anecdote. I know someone who works in the pharmaceutical industry as a manufacturing engineer, and he said to me one day, I was talking to him on the phone, he says, oh yeah, I'm standing here beside 500 million Viagra tablets. And I refrained from making several crude jokes, but he said to me, the manufacturing costs of these things are very, very, very small. He said once the production line gets going, the actual pill themselves it's pennies to manufacture in a lot of cases, a very, very small amount. So that's why I don't think the cost savings will be on that side. I think the cost savings will be much more on, if you don't have to have nurses to administrate it, if a person doesn't have to come into a hospital and things like that. I think that's where the cost savings will really show up. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I just want to add one thing about selling ourselves. When we had the pre-inspection inspection, it was a Nordic team who came over to us, and the quality manager from the pharma company was Danish. And I know we compare ourselves to Denmark all the time, but she was blown away by our setup. And our setup is the same as other centres in Ireland. In Denmark, they don't have data managers. They don't have sampling managers. They have a nurse. It's like something we did 10, 15 years ago. So we need to sell ourselves. Like, we're experienced teams who do really good work. Definitely our startup times are poor, but I think we're all focused on that now. But we have really good, high-quality teams in place. And I think that's a way, Angela, I know you go around conferences selling Ireland. We need to sell that side to it, that we have really embedded teams who have lots of experience and lots of specialisation.
Thanks, Ashley. Just on that, we did receive some data that said that while Ireland ranks 36th in Europe in terms of population, we're 13th in terms of clinician expertise and research expertise. So it is being recognised, but you're right, we just need to sing that from the rooftops and really promote the amazing capacity that we have from an experience point of view in Ireland. And actually, just Martin, because just in case I don't see afterwards, yeah, myself and Emer, are actually at a Myeloma Ireland conference last week, and there was a fantastic presentation by Exwell, Una O'Neill, and they've expanded to 60 sites around the country to promote and assist with exercise programs for people with chronic disease, including cancer. And they actually had a really good graph up, exactly to your point, on what is the evidence for the impact of exercise and what's recommended. So what they've concluded is that it's approximately 2 by 1 single hour exercise activities per week, and then in between 3 by 10-minute walks on the other days, and that's evidence derived. So just as a rough guide, that's kind of where we're heading towards. But I think there is a role potentially with the Irish Cancer Society and through CTI to help promote that awareness of exercise and particularly the work of XWell.
Thank you. So I think it also goes back to our point about that we said about leveraging technologies, that maybe that when a trial is published, there should be a YouTube video about what's actually involved, that would be easily accessible to everybody. So I'd like to, we're finishing up today, and I thought today was a wonderful reflection of the enormous community of strength we have in cancer research in Ireland. And it really was evident from, I thought, Donald's slide where he showed that they got a grant, and then the network explosion that occurred as a result of that grant occurring, and the subsequent paper presentations that have been made showing the depth of talent we have at a patient partner level and at Cancer Trials Ireland level. So I'm really hoping that the new the Clinical Trials Oversight Group recommendations come in. We are very well positioned to harvest that and to influence that and to advocate for that. One of the points I think that may not have come out in the patient partner discussion this morning is the power of patients as advocates. Our work on data protection and making data protection processes more clearer was led by Patrick as part of the press conference that we had with politicians. His testimony at that ended the conference, ended any discussion about the need for data protection modification. It was so powerful. And I know that if I had been there with a PowerPoint slide deck, I wouldn't have had a fraction of the impact that he did. So we're grateful for the partnership. We're stronger as a result of it. At the first cancer retreat, Judy Needham spoke from the Cancer Trials Group in Canada, and they'd increased cancer accrual in cancer trials by 10% in the first few years of patient partner involvement. So they really led the way in terms of showing what the positive aspects of it. And we were fortunate that Evelyn Mulroe was here as our CEO, who recognized the importance of that and was really to the forefront of advocating for that integration into what we do. I'd like to thank our sponsors without whom we would not be able to run today, and I would also like to acknowledge the presence of several people in this room who facilitated meetings with their global leads at the forthcoming ASCO meeting, and have facilitated multiple interactions with key opinion leaders in pharma over the past year that we've been working closely with to make the organization better, to make us future-proof, and to allow us to bring more trials to patients. So I'm not going to name people individually, but just to say thank you very much to the people we've reached out to for their support. I'd like to thank the other people who led today, Angela and Jerushka and Jerry, who weren't here for the first cancer retreat and are new to the Cancer Trials Ireland parish. But I'd like to take this opportunity to outline how transformative your appointments have been to the parish. You've had significant impact. I look forward in the decades ahead to seeing what happens next with your trajectories. And if it's sustained at the rate that it has been so far in the last 5 years, our patients and our communities would benefit enormously. And I know I speak for everybody in this room to say how grateful we are for that. Thank you very much, both of you. And finally, I'd like to thank the Cancer Trials Ireland team. Ken was there for the first retreat when we dealt with the cyber attack, and he's sitting at the back there avoiding our thank you. So we're going to all turn around and say thank you very much, Ken, for all of your work. And I'd like to thank Claire, who's been busy on social media and all of the work she's done with comms. And so I will close by saying thank you for attending today and for your insights, which will help us in the years ahead as well. And thank you for all of your work and advocacy and support for Cancer Trials Ireland. We're very grateful. Thank you very much.